Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the New to the Game podcast. My name's Chris, and I'm here with Ben, and we are going to be the co hosts of this new podcast. We're going to be trying to make a community of young entrepreneurs who are either brand new to business or wanting to kind of get started or don't know much about entrepreneurship or business ownership. And we're going to be talking about a lot of different things in that space. Um, this first episode is just going to be us introducing ourselves and talking about why on earth you should even listen to us. Because when I start a new podcast, I want to know whether the person talking is worth listening to. So that's the whole point of this episode. We're going to introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about who we are, talk a little bit about our backgrounds, and go from there. So once again, my name's Chris Olson, and this is Ben Schneider. And Ben, why don't you go ahead and
What is
introduce
up?
yourself? What's
What's
up,
up,
man?
guys? Not too much, man. So yeah, my name is Ben Schneider. I live over here in a town called Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina. If you are not familiar with that, you could just say south of Raleigh, and you'll land where we are. But basically, I am 26 years old. I started a sod installation company. So think landscape company, but very focused on essentially lawn renovation is a good way to put it. So it's a very, very niche company within our greater area. And essentially what we do is people hire us to come out there and replace their yards. But I've been in business for about a little over 5 years now. And I was married in 2018, started the business in 2019. We had our first daughter in 2022. So we are a growing family. And yeah, just working away in this area. And when Chris and I started the conversation about being able to start this podcast and start a community more focused towards younger entrepreneurs, it just immediately, it was like speaking my love language, because I just realized that for me personally, I'm in an area and I'm in a space where there is an extraordinarily few number of young people that are in the trades, and especially the young people that are in the trades are normally more like they mow lawns for a living, or they just have just started, they're just picking up something, they just got out of college. So it was a really, it's a cool opportunity for us to be able to really communicate about not only why it is so valuable and such an amazing experience and a really amazing time to be a young person in the trades, but also to get into a very tactical how you can be able to start in the trades and not have to make a lot of the mistakes that Chris and I made along the way. Him and I both, and you'll come to know this, is that him and I both, through very much lived experience, have been through almost every single hard curveball that you can be thrown or mistake that you can make in the trades businesses. And especially for those who are in that, really, we'll say 100K all the way up to maybe 2.5 million. So that's a really big area and a big, large area of coverage. And that's sort of where we've planted our feet and been able to find out a lot of the things that you can avoid doing in this space to not have to go through some of the pain that we found ourselves in. But yeah, so that's my short intro. I'm sure there's a lot more to that. I know in fact, there's a lot more to that. But yeah, Chris, I'll let you take it away on your end. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Chris Olson. I owned a general contracting, remodeling, exterior business in the greater Seattle area. And I now currently own an exterior maintenance and cleaning company. So I started my GC company when I was 23. I'm currently 29. I closed that GC business last year. And I have had my exterior cleaning and maintenance company since 2020. I'm a former employee of that company. Started working there in high school. The owner was a mentor of mine, taught me a lot of what I know about business. And then in 2021, when COVID hit, she and her husband decided they no longer wanted to be in business after 25 years, and they moved to a golf course in Arizona and left me the keys to the company. I mean, I paid a lot of money for those keys to the company, but long story short. But I also, like Ben said, I'm 29 years old currently, been in business since I was 21, almost 22. And as Ben has said, both of us have made pretty much every mistake in the book. We've grown companies from nothing to seven figures and eight figures and lots of money. And we have made every mistake along the way that put us to the brink of being out of business all the way up to being successful and growing and year after year growth. Um, I guess that's about it as far as personal intro. I guess I should talk about my family. I have a beautiful wife named Kayla, a 7-month-old son named Jackson, and two stepdaughters that are 3 and 5. So we are also a growing family. We bought our first house in January. We got tired of renting after years and years and years of renting and finally bought a house. We are fixing up that house because being a contractor, I decided that buying a fixer upper sounded like a great idea. And I already regret that very much. But yeah, life is crazy, life is busy, but that's the nature of business ownership sometimes, and it's just another part of the game.
Without a doubt. Um, Chris, let me ask you this out of curiosity. I'd love to hear your answer to this question. How would you describe yourself on a more personality basis? Like, what would your friends say about you, or even your wife say about you, or maybe even your clients and workers say about you when it comes to who is Chris? How would they normally describe you in that realm?
Man, it's a good question. I would definitely say that people that know me well, my family, my wife, my friends, I'm sure you would relate to this, that I am passionate about a lot of things to the level that it is arguably obsession. I love getting really deep and granular and detailed on new topics, new things, and I love learning. And I love reading and studying and growing as an individual. And I would definitely say that a lot of my clients see that, but I think what a lot of my clients see is just a really personable guy that loves to help people. And a lot of them would probably just say that I don't know, I guess I'm obsessed with creating a quality product. Like a lot of my clients make the comment that like your company just does a different level of service than most people. It's not just that we do a really good job or that we build nice things or that we do a good job cleaning windows. It's that our client experience is so detailed and so almost obsessive with satisfaction that people think it's almost above and beyond what's needed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mine is similar in some ways, different in others. So I would say on the business side, it's very similar. Just kind of a radical attention to detail and attention to high quality of service, like an uncommon degree of service is what I like to describe it as internally. It's
Yeah.
just we went through a lot of seasons as a business where, as I'm sure a lot of young people go, where like some seasons you're fueled by ambition and you're fueled by the idea of like you just got to make the next dollar and you got to scale, 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 scale. But then on the flip side of that, that often creates an environment where you scale too rapidly and then your customer experience very rapidly
Mm-hmm.
diminishes, and then you just kind of start to feel a little bit like a fraud within your space. So
Yep.
mine was some of that. Now we still were able to maintain our reputation through that, but there was just over the past couple of years there was a very intentional transition that I just decided I recognized that I saw the experience of other companies that have tried to put so much fuel on the fire to the point where there's really not any true wood to burn on, and all they're running on is fuel. So it just creates this really, honestly, a kind of toxic environment. And I really didn't want to be that. I wanted to be, I've always principally been a guy of quality over quantity. So that's sort of what we shifted our focus to. So that's been, I mean, yeah, with internally as a company, that's been a big thing as far as the way that I lead the company is extremely quality focused and extremely service oriented. But then just recognizing that stuff happens, and you've got to be able to plow through that. On the
Yeah.
personal side, it's a different dynamic because obviously my wife would probably describe me as someone who is very energetic and someone who is annoyingly positive, and but also someone that like really cares super deeply. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just the type of person like I have friends that would see me, and they sometimes, to a fault, they would almost think that I'm like too focused on personal development, or I care a little bit too much about, I don't know, structure and living a good life. And I don't mean a good life as in like the world perspective of good life as in like party hard and go crazy and you only live once type of lifestyle, but much more in like, I want our life to be very inherently good. I want my daughter is Summer. She's only 2 years old now. She just turned two. And I want to be an intentional father. I want to be a person that can show up for my family in an extremely effective way. I've walked through seasons of massive degrees of just numbing out to life. I've walked through seasons of addiction. I've walked through seasons of being that crazy hyper ambitious person to where I just kind of everyone else was just in the way of that goal. But that's definitely shifted over the past couple of years now as I've been able to step much deeper into my faith. I mean, I'm a believer, love the Lord, and He's been able to show up just in massive ways in my life over the past few years, and not just in a like a super spiritualistic type of way, but like in a very tangible. My life is different. I live a different
Mm-hmm.
life. I engage a lot more hard things in my life, and not just simply because I'm trying to achieve some desired outcome, but honestly because I do want to be able to show up as the absolute best version of myself more for the people in my life, for my company, for everything, so that I can essentially I've been given a lot of gifts, a lot of mindsets, and I want to be a very good steward of those things because at the end of the day, if I'm not a good steward of those things, if I haven't really lived to a standard that I feel like I'm capable of, I walk out the other side wondering if there just could have been more for me and a more meaningful life that I could have lived. Um, but yeah, that's a
Yeah.
short little tangent, but that's definitely a deeper dive into my personal side.
Yeah. Without a doubt, man. Yeah, I completely agree though. I feel like the type of people that we've become over the last 3 years because of the mentorship we've had, because of our faith, because of our interactions, because of the friends we've surrounded ourselves with, is just so drastically different than we were 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah. And it's different from our peers. I mean, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
why the mission of what we're doing with this podcast is not just because we think it's a cool thing to do. It
Yeah.
is sort of, but like at the same time, it's also because I don't know. We've been those people for a long time. We've been the people who are surrounded by young people because those are our peers,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. Yet for whatever reason, we've chosen to live lives with just kind of a different degree of personal responsibility towards our business, towards our family, towards our faith, towards our fitness, like all of those things. And
Yeah.
it has manifested itself in a way where we kind of very easily can find ourselves on islands. And
Mm-hmm.
the reality is that doesn't have to be the case. Sometimes you have to kind of look at the broader ocean because there are many people who are in the same boat as you. You just don't really know them or you haven't really encountered them yet. What Chris and I have come to discover is that there are, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people that are in this same type of boat. They just are
Yep.
very detached from it. And they don't know how to actually find that community that allows them to feel like they're not the only person in the world that's actually trying to do this at such a young
Mm-hmm.
age.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason that you and I were so drawn to this idea is that both of us have been in those positions. Like the when you and I were talking about the sort of people that we're making this podcast for, it's not just 18-year-olds that want to start a business. It's not just 21-year-olds that are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. It's not just people in the trades that are thinking about starting a business, and it's not just people that have already started a business but need help. It's all of those people. It's all of the
Yeah.
younger generation that is just striving for more, and they're kind of pushing against the grain that is the normal for people our age to just go to college and get a job. And all those people you want more. They want a community of people that also want more, and they want help and mentorship. And a lot of times, like I
Yeah.
know one of the biggest blessings for me over the last 5 to 10 years has been finding people both my age and older, but especially people that are younger that have been there, done that, been through all the ropes, been through all the trials and tribulations, been through the dark side of owning a business, been through the days where you're sitting in your office on a Thursday night and you have to make payroll and pay off your supplier on Monday and you have no idea how you're going to do that. And we've been in those positions enough times to know how to avoid getting there to begin with. And we really
Yeah.
wanted to try and create a community of people where we can share that knowledge and experience to help people that are just getting started, not sure where to get started, or they've started and they are in need of extra help. And there's so many of those people out there. I mean, you and I started talking
Yeah.
and we could think of 20, 30, 40, 50 people just off the top of our head. If you started thinking about the whole country, the whole world, and all the people out there, there's so many people that could benefit from the experience and the help that we've gotten, and passing along
Yeah.
that knowledge and experience in a way that is helpful and easy to listen to. And as a little side tangent, just so for the people listening know, we are not going to be a 3 hour long format conversation podcast. Our format, this is probably going to be one of the longest episodes we do for a while, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of really short, bite-sized, digestible content, because we know, as two people that are in their 20s, that this is not, it's not something that you can sit down and take 3 hours to learn most of the time. We're going to be creating a lot of content that is 5, 10, 15 minutes long, that you can listen to when you're in the truck on the way to a job in the morning, when you are on the treadmill or lifting weights at the gym, when you are just having a break between the other 20 things that you have to do. And we're going to make it really tactical, really useful, and really practical in short, bite-sized pieces, so that you have the chance to listen to those things and learn without having to spend 3 hours listening to some guy talk.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something, I think, one of the words that we kind of described it as when we were first looking at this was, there's presently something of a void in or a
Yep.
hole in this demographic that just
Mm-hmm.
isn't there. And it's not that like there's not young entrepreneurs. There's obviously a ton of those. The tricky part is that you often find this sphere of younger entrepreneurs that are either, on one end, they're going and they're participating in maybe a coaching program, or they're watching the reels or the TikToks or whatever on like business advice. And it's not bad inherently, but there's a two sides of the coin. One is like, okay, you have to be hyper focused on 10xing your growth and being a massive success. And all the stories are like how we became multimillionaires overnight. And everything is about finding the easiest and the fastest route to have the absolute most
Mm-hmm.
possible success. And I think, I
Yep.
mean, Chris, you and I can both agree that we've both been in those spheres, and they're just they're not healthy places to be. You tend to find
No.
a ton of compromise ethically as well as morally with just
Mm-hmm.
trying to, I don't know, trying to find a way to do that in a way that is actually authentic, in a way that is right. But then also being able to have the lens that you and I have now, which is you look at so many of those stories, and the reality is that it's fair to say that probably 80, if not more percent of those are not really what they're cut out to be. They're actually a lot messier than they actually appear. They're actually a lot more stressful than they appear. And they actually require a lot more sacrifice and a lot more compromise than you might actually feel comfortable with. So part of the way I would describe it is like, I recognize that there are some people that do genuinely want that, and that's awesome. But then on the flip side of it, there are also people that don't necessarily want that as fast, or they at least want to try and maintain some ounce of their integrity as they do it. And in order to be able to do so, you basically have people who are really smart, really sharp, but they get just invaded by all of this go stuff. And it forces them to step outside of what they're able to do. They're constantly testing themselves and challenging themselves, but pushing themselves to a limit that's not healthy. And then on the flip side,
Mm-hmm.
you get the other people that are like, they don't really have any clue what they're doing. And there's a lot more fear motivation within there. And they're like kind of afraid of what it takes to do any of this stuff. There's a lot of negative mindsets. There's a lot of
Yep.
scarcity mindsets that fall around that realm. And I don't know, you can say this probably better than I could, but the reality is that there's a way to be able to do both in a way that's
Mm-hmm.
healthy. Like there's a way to be able to negate the fear, but also still be very mindful of the structural foundation of your company and the foundational skills that you really should have as a business owner. And on the flip side, like there also is a very tangible way to create a framework for your company that allows you to be able to grow a lot more aggressively without having to feel as if you're compromising your entire service quality or the entire integrity of your company in order to be able to do so.
Mm-hmm. I think honestly the way to summarize that up into one statement is something that one of our coaches used to always say, which is you can scale a turd and make it 10 times as big as it currently is, and it's still a turd. um, and I think that's one of the things that people fail to realize is that like I made a post on Facebook not that long ago about how growth is a lagging indicator. Like growing a company and growing a business and growing a service does not equal success. It just equals growth. Growth without quality is just bloat. It's just growth. Whereas if you increase systemization, you increase quality, you increase customer service, you increase satisfaction, you increase the quality of your service and focus on being good, getting better will always be better than getting bigger. And if you get
Yeah.
better, your market will demand that you grow. So you'll grow by default. But just growing and getting bigger and making more money in your business does not ever equal, or does not always equal, success. It doesn't equal more revenue. It doesn't equal more profit. It doesn't equal happier customers. It doesn't equal a better product. It just equals growth.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're the person that like genuinely is wanting to do so many of those things,
Mm-hmm.
the reality, this is where I found myself a lot of times because I didn't, my company wasn't one that just exponentially grew every single year. It was one where my growth was much slower. And my
Mm-hmm.
experience in that was one because I was much more on the fear side of it. I was much more in that category of people that was very afraid of what it actually took. Like I knew the implications, but I wasn't so much willing to embrace the implications of what it took to actually grow as a company and grow in a way that was healthy, growing in a way that was like actually being a good steward, actually being mindful of the return on investment that I would see as a person who wanted to grow their business. So I was so enamored all the time with like being super quality focused, being super service oriented, being super structured in all these ways, monitoring all my KPIs and all my financials. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I did a lot of those things because it has now laid an amazing framework. But man, if I had been able to do some of those things 5 years ago on day one, the result
Mm-hmm.
would have been incomprehensible as far as where I would have been in my company and how that would have actually truly impacted the quality of my life. And I mean, Chris, you could share more of your story, but you were kind of on the opposite side of the token.
Yep. Yeah, so I was more or less on the opposite side where I was focused on growth. And I for years, like 2, 3, 4 years in my general contracting company, I was convinced that the secret to the current problems I have was more revenue and more business and more customers and more sales and growing and scaling and expanding. And what I didn't realize is that I took a company from extremely profitable at 500,000 to a million a year to $3 million a year with a crew 4 times the size, a 3,000 square foot shop, a whole fleet of vehicles, an office staff, and a super high quality service. But we were actually less profitable at $3 million than we were at 700,000. And I basically did not have the systems and quality and standard of operations that would have made that company successful at that size. And I grew and I got bigger, and on the outside it looked like success. I had people knocking down my door saying like, how did you do this? How did you make this happen? What's your secret? And at the end of the day, when I look back at my financials for those first 4 or 5 years in business, like I actually lost money in those last couple of years at the biggest I ever was, which is, people have a hard time understanding that like you can own a $3 million a year company and finish the year at a loss. Like it's not that hard to do. And
But
that's why they're actually there.
didn't that give you a great tax return in 2022?
It gave me a really nice tax return in 2022. The IRS owed me money because I lost so much. But that is, it's kind of funny because like I went from doing really well to on the outside doing so much better, but in reality not doing that much better. And now I'm back down at a much smaller size. Like my company will probably do 7 or 800,000 this year with a crew of a fraction of the size. But we're systematized, we're profitable, we're consistent, we have raving reviews, we have raving fans of customers, and we are growing brick by brick instead of building by building. And in the next couple of years, that company will probably be a $2 or $3 million a year company again. that it will be built with a solid foundation. And from all the lessons that I've learned the last 7 or 8 years and all the mentorship I've received from the last 7 or 8 years, and as we continue to grow and scale this other business, it will be so much more successful than the first company because of all the lessons I learned the hard way by spending an absolute crap load of money on things that weren't important and losing a crap load of money because of mistakes that I didn't know any better at the time.
Let me ask you this, because I know that there would be people that hear that and say, okay, so this guy's at working towards $2 to $3 million, but I want to be the 10 million. I want to have 8 figures, or I want to have 9 figures, and they want to scale like again, shoot for the moon. I did a post yesterday talking about, or the other day talking about how, yeah, it's cool to shoot for the moon, but it's also like really hard to breathe on the moon as well.
Yeah.
What would you describe the benefit for you of being able to be in the position that you are in? Like that the actual value to Chris and Chris's family and Chris's culture. Like what would you describe that as far as the company that you're in now compared to the company that you were a part of 2 years ago?
I mean, at the end of the day, it boils down to the company I have now. I have happy and satisfied employees. I have happy and satisfied customers, and I have less stress because the business has been built on a more solid foundation and is growing off that solid foundation, where I'm not constantly running around trying to fix problems that are prevented by having appropriate systems in place. I'm not running around trying to find customers. I haven't had a time in years where I'm sitting at my desk trying to figure out how I'm going to put work on the schedule for my crew next week so that they can get a paycheck. Because of the solid foundation we have, because of our systems in our business, because of our recurring contracts and recurring clients, because of our enormous amount of referrals and return customers, we we are slowly, brick by brick, customer by customer, employee by employee, building a solid foundation. And will that company be $10 million someday? No idea. Possibly. Will it be $3 to $5 million and I sell it? Also possible. Highly doubt it. Will it be two, three, $4 million and all I have to do is be the CEO? Probably at some point. But if you try to jump straight from you in your pickup truck working in the field, starting a company, to 20 employees and an office staff, there's a lot of lessons to be learned in the middle there. You can't just start a company one day and then 6 months later have a 20-person staff. I mean, you can. I know people that have done it successfully, but that's the exception to the rule. It really
Yep.
does not happen that way very often, and it's usually a very unique circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I'm just excited about all of this, because
Yeah.
essentially I want to lay out sort of expectations of what this is actually going to look like. Like this isn't just going to be Chris and I,
Yep.
like Chris said earlier, this isn't just going to be us sitting here and talking and just talking about stories of our past or lessons that we've learned. I'm sure there will be some of that in every episode to some degree, but the goal of this is for us to be able to, again, start by laying out something of a framework that's going to be hyper tactical. Like something
Mm-hmm.
so much so where if you were to be able to listen to this podcast, if you were to sit down for 15 minutes, have a notepad in front of you, have your computer in front of you, and just think tactically about what we are talking about within our episodes and start taking action on them right away, that you will see, like, not just see fruit, you will see immediate fruit. You will see
Mm-hmm.
immediate impact. Like something that is so actionable, so simplified, but in a way that, like, again, the way I look at it is that you could very easily make this insanely complicated. I'm currently
Yep.
working on a course on financial discipline and financial literacy. That is an insanely complicated subject. But the reality is that as business owners, we don't have to necessarily dwell in the muck, in the mud of the complications. And again, from my
Mm-hmm.
perspective, being the more fear oriented one, that's all I saw whenever I looked at financial stuff or marketing or strategizing and all that sort of stuff. It just seemed super complicated, and I was terrified to have to step into the realm of learning it. But the cool part is that from our point of view now, we actually can, having taken those steps into the unknown with it, we actually are able to look at it and say, okay, this isn't super complicated. It can be, and it is in so many ways, but there's also a very, very way to be able to look at this stuff simply And when you have kind of more of a higher level, simplified overview of how you're going to approach things, it changes so much the trajectory of how you're able to walk into places with confidence, with just the best word I would use is literacy, whether it be
Yep.
financial or marketing or anything. It's to be able to be a more literate person, meaning you have a good, healthy overview understanding of the key and core subjects within your business. And starting with that, like that is it is going to change your business without a doubt. And that's what our focus is going to be.
Yep. And and like Ben said, he's working on a course on financial literacy. I'm working on a course that is going to be your first 90 days crash course in marketing. And what we really want to do, and like what we've both talked about on this episode so far, is that we want to create a community where people can become literate. They can get that level of literacy in business that takes most people, Ben and myself included, years of trial and error, mistakes, and money to figure out. And part of the motivation that we have with putting this content out there is not for us to like sell you a $300 course. It's to give people this level of value that we searched for and sought out and paid lots of money for over the years in order to get to where we are now. And we both really just want to share our experience and knowledge and the trials that we've been through in a way that is super uber valuable to new business owners, younger people, and people that want to get into home service and trade type businesses and jobs. And we're going to be doing a bunch of different things. We're going to be recording these podcasts, posting them on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. We're also starting a community on Skool, which, if you're not familiar with that, Skool, it's basically an online community platform where you can create groups and you can create communities and you can share content and courses and education. And it basically allows you to build a community online of like minded people around whatever topic you want. So we're going to be starting a Skool group, also called New to the Game. Also, for backstory, just because I realized we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but the podcast and our community is going to be called New to the Game, meaning the game of entrepreneurship, the game of business ownership. Because in a lot of ways, it is a game. It is a never-ending strategic game that you play. It's not a finish line. It's not a race. It's a game that you become a part of and join willingly, and it will be the hardest but also most rewarding thing you ever do. So we're going to be creating content. We're going to be creating courses. We're going to be filming videos and podcasts. And our goal is to build a community for younger, newer entrepreneurs and people that are in high school or 20 something years old that want to start a company or have started a company and are lost, or they're just not sure where to start. So we're going to be doing a lot of different topics and a lot of different things with that. But we're starting with the basics. We're starting with the stuff that you need to know in your first 90 to 180 days of business, and that you need to keep yourself out of trouble and that you need to get yourself started. We're going to talk about finding clients. We're going to talk about financial literacy. We're going to talk about bookkeeping. We're going to talk about marketing. We're going to talk about tracking KPIs and benchmarks, everything in between. We're not going to get granular on this is how you hang a sheet of drywall, because there's a billion YouTube videos out there for that already. What we're going to be doing is talking about being a new business owner. And we want to give you that in a relatable fashion that is tactical, simple, easy to digest, and coming from somebody who's the same age as you. We are not 70 years old, uber rich with 30 years of business background. We are not the big names out there on the podcast and YouTube space that have 14 companies and diversified revenue streams and trying to sell you something. We are 20 something year old business owners who have been through the ringer and just want to share what we've learned, which I think is going to be pretty fun for us. I know I'm excited about it. Ben, I know you're excited about it. So anything you want to add on that?
I'm super excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you're listening to this, and whether it be you that falls into the bucket of basically, I guess we sort of highlighted three categories there. I mean, one category is you haven't started yet. You're young and you haven't started yet. You're what maybe 18 or 16 even to
Yeah.
35. then listen to this podcast, and I guarantee you there will be things in here that you find valuable. And I'm not going to say that you're not going to have to dig through 45 podcasts to find the one episode that's meaningful to you. Like, I think that we're going to be approaching this in a way that there's going to be a high level value for every single person that listens to it. The second
Yep.
party being the person that is, maybe you just started, like you're actually just getting going and you're just starting to figure some of this stuff out, and you're being hit with those waves of fear or those waves of ambition, and you're just not really sure how to handle those. Listen to this podcast. There's going to be something here for you without a doubt. And then in the last party, like, you don't have to be someone that just started your business. Like, you could be in business for 4 or 5 years, 10 years, but even still, because you're still within that realm of, like, there's just those areas that there's a lot of uncertainty around. Listen to this podcast and there's going to be something for you. I'm going to read.
Yep.
So I pulled up a quote, and it's one of my favorite quotes. It's a quote from John Adams. And contextually, this quote does not make sense, but I would like to invite you to think about it in the way of how it may apply to business. And I'm gonna go ahead and start this here real quick. So this is from John Adams. The science of government, it is my duty to study more than all other sciences. The arts of legislation and administration and negotiation ought to take the place of, or indeed exclude in a manner, all other arts. I must study politics and war, that our sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. Our sons ought to study mathematics and philosophy, geography, natural history and naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and agriculture, in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain. Again, contextually, that may not make sense, but the point of the quote that is my favorite part is it's a very, very honest recognition of what the cost is if he wants for his children. Or, I mean, honestly, you can think about this in our world, which is a much faster paced world. You can look at this and say your future self. If you
Yep.
focus your efforts on the things that truly matter for the time that you are in right now, it is going to make a radical difference in your ability to be able to focus on the things that are much like the fun things, the enjoyable things, the pleasurable, meaningful things down the road. But in
Yep.
order to be able to do that, you must study this first.
Love it. Love it, Ben. Awesome. Well, we are at 35 minutes. I take that as the longest episode we're going to have for a little while.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add before I do like a short little wrap up thing?
No, man. I think we're good.
Awesome. So for all you guys listening, all 7 of you, because this is our first episode ever and we don't have a following yet.
We have
We are
7
going to be.
followers.
I mean, I'm including both of our parents, so that's 8.
Yep. Okay.
Um,
Yeah. My 2-year-old
we
daughter.
got we got. I was gonna say we have parents, wives, and enough kids. We'll get to 7.
We're there.
But no, for everybody listening, in the present and in the future, when we end up with a million people following us and they're going to dig back for this first episode we ever filmed, we're just super excited. We're super stoked to bring quality content out to you guys for free. We're going to be creating a free community on Skool, so that community already exists. It's in brand new infancy stages, so we're going to be sending out invites to people that we know and posting them along with this episode on different platforms. If you like what we're doing, follow us on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, find us on YouTube. But the main place that we're really trying to get people to get involved with us with is Skool, because that's where we want to create our community and be able to give people access to all the content that we're making, all the stuff we're working on. And in the future, that's going to be where we are posting the most valuable content. We're going to be filming a podcast and YouTube episodes, but we're also going to be filming more in-depth courses, more in-depth videos, and we're going to get a lot more granular on Skool. So if you want to just listen, hit subscribe. If you want to follow us and get more, then come join us on Skool. And at all of those places, it is new to the game with Chris Olson and Ben Schneider.
Amazing.